Welcome to episode 3 of the Games to be Told podcast. I'm Troy Barter. My guest this week is Luke Ruffing, and we're going to talk about negotiating compensation. When you get an offer, how do you negotiate your compensation? When you're looking to get a raise, once you've proven yourself somewhere and you're on your yearly review or you just feel like it's time, how do you negotiate that? Why do I have Luke in? Because Luke worked for me in the past. He was in my sales organization. He didn't negotiate his compensation up front with me, but I had heard stories that he is one of the best. In fact, the company changed the way that they negotiated comp after going through a negotiation with Luke because he was so good at it. One thing that I want you to keep in mind when listening to how Luke negotiates compensation is that when Luke does this, he comes from a place of tremendous leverage and indifference. What I mean by leverage is generally when Luke is negotiating compensation, if he's got an offer for a new place, he's already crushing it and making great money somewhere else. So he's got that leverage. He doesn't need them. They need him a lot more than he needs them when he's at the table and he's negotiating. When he wants a raise, exact same thing. Luke knows that he probably has other offers that are out there or that are coming, and that creates that indifference and that creates the leverage that enables him to use the tactics that he brings up on this podcast. Why am I telling you that? Well, if in this market you were laid off and you've been unemployed for 4 or 5 months trying to break back in, trying to get a job, you may not want to do some of the aggressive negotiating tactics that Luke lays out unless you have some leverage, unless you have some indifference. You might want to try some of them, but I wanted to kind of say that up front so you know, all right, if you're dying for a job, you're running into some serious financial hardships, you've been out of work for a while, you may not want to say, hey, I know that the base here says 120 to 140, I want 160. Also, compensation is just one part of whether or not you'd want to take a job. It's one of the advantages, it's probably the biggest one, but also the culture, the product, the people that are there, the leadership team, how much you believe in them, where you think the trajectory is of the company. Those things all come into play as well, and comp is just one part, even though it is a large part of it. So you have to decide how to negotiate that's going to be best for you. There is no hard and fast rule, but Luke is exceptional when it comes to negotiating his compensation. If you like this conversation, don't forget to like the video, or, if you're listening to this on a podcast, follow the podcast, share this, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit the bell. Let's get going and get right in with Luke Ruffing. Luke Ruffing, what's going on, man? I appreciate you being the third guest on this podcast, talking about something that, I'd say is near and dear to my heart, but candidly, it's actually something that I suck at. I've always sucked at it. I think I'm really good at negotiating a deal when it's for a company. Obviously, when we do a demo, we get the pricing. I'm very, very good at that, I would say. But in terms of negotiating my own compensation, I think I'm pretty bad at it. I actually think that I would probably be on the lower end. It's one of my weak points. So why would I have you on to talk about that? You worked for me. You were on my team, and whenever you negotiated comp and it was with me, it was when you were already there and everything like that. And candidly, I'm when you're a high value player like you were, we would not have done what we did where we worked together if it wasn't for you. We 10x the outbound revenue in the first year, and then we 3x'd it the year after. That does not happen if you're not on the team. So when you came to negotiate comp with me, I'm just like, all right, how can I give you everything that you're worth, hopefully even more, because it's worth it. I've seen the value. I think that when it comes to the other side of things, when maybe you haven't proved out that value yet, when you're in the interview or when you're a little bit earlier and you're maybe embarking on, a new project for the company and you need to negotiate your compensation, that's where you have really kicked ass. In fact, kicked ass to the point that you were able to negotiate not more than what you're worth, but a lot closer to what you're worth than what most companies are willing to pay out, to the point
Still didn't get what
that
I wanted.
one could theorize that companies may have even changed how they negotiate compensation because of the deals that you were able to cut when you were negotiating it. And I am admittedly weak at this. I think I'll probably get more out of this conversation than even the people that are listening to it, because goddamn, I need some help when it comes to negotiating comp. So yeah, man, I appreciate you joining though, man.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And it's interesting you started this whole rant off with, hey, you're great at negotiating for the company. And why is that? Why do you think you do so well in deals?
because the deal, personally, I think it's because the deals aren't personal. And I think my comp is personal. I think the comp is I'm negotiating me to a company. And this is both a flaw that I have and also the reason why I've had success in everything that I've done, whether it be making content, whether it be when I was, a musician as a rapper or a battle rapper, and in sales. I take everything incredibly personal. When people are like, you have to separate personal and professional life, I don't do that. I'm borderline incapable of doing it. But when I'm in a deal, it's not, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't buy from me. It's not my product. It's the product that I'm representing. When I'm negotiating my compensation, I'm representing me. So when you tell me that I'm not worth something, I take that personally. By the way, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. It's absolutely a flaw, and it's not something that you should do when you're negotiating. It's just absolutely either a character flaw or a really bad habit that everything I take personal, which can work well, right? Obviously, I managed you. I was your leader,
Motivated, driven, you use those things.
Yeah, man. I mean, like we're boys in and outside of work, and I usually am that way with pretty much anyone that I manage. I try to get to know them inside of work and outside of work, and I take it personally. They're a friend of mine, and if things don't work out, and people need to part ways, I'm there. Everyone knows, that I'm a phone call away, even if they underperformed. And it's like, all right, well, we've done everything that we can. We've tried to build you up. We're trying to do everything. You're not there. We can't keep you, unfortunately. We're running like a professional sports team. Sorry, can't keep you. I still, on a personal level, you need anything, I'm there for you. But I do think that's where the issue is with me, where I can negotiate really well on a deal. But when it comes to negotiating for me, particularly not at the early onset, but maybe when I'm renegotiating, maybe when we're talking about, oh, hey, we're going to move you into a new role, we're going to promote you, and you know what I can do, and you know what I have done for the company.
That's coming out of that rookie contract.
Yeah, I can take that incredibly personal, where it's like, well, wait a minute, you know what I'm worth. So what are you saying right now? Are you essentially saying that I'm not worth it? You don't believe that? I take that personal. For sure. And I think you are incredible at, you don't take it personal. In fact, the way that you negotiate, the other side begins to take it personal. It feels like where I'm not trying to say this in a negative light, but to the point that they're like PTSD from negotiating the deal. And they're like, all right, we're not doing that ever again. He might've got us on that. We're not doing that anymore. But I don't think that's a negative. I don't think you've, in anything that I've seen with you, I don't think that you've ever been overpaid. In fact, I think that you're going to be hard-pressed to find any salesperson that's ever been overpaid. They're all technically underpaid for what they bring in for the most part. And the reality is, how close can you get to what you're actually worth? Obviously, you need to bring in more money than you're getting paid, or it doesn't make any sense. But how much more are you bringing in versus what you're getting paid is the reality. And how is it worked out? And are you getting paid for the risk that you might be taking with, I think are a whole bunch of things. Where I wanted
You're
to start
exactly
with,
right.
And man, I know that you and I both don't have all of the answers, but I'd like to get your spin on this because, man, I've been in sales for over 17 years. Out of everyone that I've worked with, I think you're the best at negotiating compensation that I've worked with as an individual contributor. And I cannot remember people talking about this in depth on really any podcast or really any content, in terms of, well, how do you negotiate your deal? So what I would start with is this, man. Before you get hired, when you get in, you see a range, right? Hey, we're going to pay you a salary, let's say an AE salary. All right, it's anywhere from, and they usually have a broad swing when you see it on LinkedIn or on AngelList or whatever. Yeah, the salary can be anywhere from 60 to 120 grand. That's where the salary is at. And you first apply, and they'll ask you a lot of times when you're applying, what do you expect your salary to be? So you see that 60K to 120K. What do you expect your salary to be? What are you putting down?
What am I putting down in that range? Well, if I understand the range going in, I know what I'm going to be paid at the company. I'm going to go above that.
Yep.
Because you're not going to be able to negotiate up. You're going to be negotiating down once you get in. So I'm asking for 150, 160. Does that completely ruin our chances of working together? That's a quick trial close you can put right off the bat.
Yep. So, and the big thing that I remember saying to you while things were going on when it came to negotiating your comp the first time, and I actually had nothing to do with it that first time. I was like, God damn, man, you were good at this. And I even made sure to say, like, I vividly remember this. Short-term memory is horrible. Long-term memory is pretty good. Where I was like, that's not a knock, by the way. I legitimately admire the fact that you're really good at it, because I'm actually not that good at it. And you said a specific word, leverage. You know, what you want is leverage. And the reality is, when you say, all right, the range is 60 to 120, they're going to ask you before they even talk to you. It'll be on the thing that you fill out a lot of the time. What do you expect your comp to be? You're saying you would put it higher. And I think the reason why you would put it higher is because you, rightfully so, believe that the job needs you more than you need the job. You're already at somewhere. You're already doing well. So if your inability to negotiate up and start somewhere and negotiate down, if that doesn't work out, then you wouldn't be interested to begin with. Is that a fair assumption?
That's exactly right. I hate to keep going back to the beginning of this episode, but you keep saying you negotiate well for the company. I'm in the business of me. I'm treating this the exact same way that I would treat a sales negotiation.
Yep.
So you're running the same types of calculation. It's not only what have I done for you in the past, what are the results there, but what can you expect in the future, and what's the ROI of investing in me and my talents?
Yep.
Is it going to pay you more than I am going to get? Because that's how transactions work, and that's how sales work.
Yep. And I can see the best salespeople can put themselves in the shoes of the person that they're selling. Whoever can put themselves in the shoes of those people the best are generally the best salespeople. It's not the people that know the product the best. It's the people that know the prospect the best, hands down. So as someone who's on the other side of the table, you know, at a director level or higher, whenever I'm interviewing someone, if I saw that, what I would think is, all right, maybe we can't afford him, but I want to talk to him. I want to talk to the person that had that range between there and it's higher, and I want to know why they have that much confidence to put it higher. At the very least, I want to have a conversation with them and see whether or not we can make it fit. And maybe we can't, but maybe there's other things that we can do, because we're only talking base salary at this point. We're not talking OTE or anything like that. All right, so let's say you get in, all right, you put your 150 or put whatever, all right, you get in, go through the interview process. Is there anything that you do in the interview process when you're not talking about compensation to help you once it gets to the point that you might receive an offer and it's time to start negotiating it?
Yeah, on that side of things, I'm doing a few things outside of this. I'm doing research on the company. I'm doing research outside the company. What other offers can I get? And also talking to people who know the person I am meeting with and negotiating with.
Yep.
I want to know what their ticks are. I want to know what gets them going in the morning. I want to understand what they care about. Is it close $1? Is it sticking to a budget and a plan? Is it growing out a new department? What do they care about, and how can I frame the conversation around those things?
I like that a lot, because there's a big difference between what you just said and what most people will talk about in terms of content. If you're trying to figure out how to interview, what they're going to say is, what are they going to tell you to research? The company. They're going to tell you to research the company, maybe research the culture. And they might say, hey, reach out to people that have worked there currently or previously and get to know, hey, what's the culture like? What are your peers going to be like on the floor? What are things like over there? What they're never talking about, at least that I've seen, is research the exact person that you're interviewing and find out what's their deal, what's their disposition, what have you ran into? Hey, when negotiating comp, any pointers? No one brings that stuff up, dude. And it is funny that is borderline more important than researching the company, because if you know the person that you're interviewing better than you know the company isn't the one that's extending the offer. The company is just an organization. They're not a human being. You have to convince the human beings that are within that company to want to offer you. And the reality is, whatever the budget is, usually there's wiggle room. Usually they're not going to put down the end-all be-all of what can be done. They're probably going to lowball it a bit in case they run into somebody like you. So the more that you get to know that person that more than likely is in control of the budget, or is, or along the way, the different type of people that you're going to be interviewing with, number one, the better interview you're going to have. Obviously, you want to know the company as well, because they're going to ask you those questions. But the more that you know them, the better off you're going to be. And it's funny, I don't talk about that, but I do it. So I'll take their name and I'll Google it, obviously, and I also put it into YouTube. I like the YouTube
Ah.
more than what I get off of Google because a lot of times, if you're talking to people that are at a VP level or a C level, they've done interviews. There's probably something out there from a content perspective that you might see. I mean, God, at Fleetmatics, the CEO was on Mad Money. Like all right, hey, I saw that. And don't just say that you saw it, pick out a couple of things that you liked about it and bring it up. And what do they get out of that? They're like, all right, this dude does his research ahead of time before, because what you're interviewing for, everything that you do within that interview process is basically a fortune teller of what's going to come when you're actually selling for them, where it's like, man, they got to know things at a level that everybody else didn't. They've separated themselves. And what are you doing when you're in sales? Particularly in tech sales, you've got to
Yep.
separate yourself from the other people. Your solution and yourself has to be unique, has to be ideal, and it has to be unique. And one great way to make yourself unique is to show, I did the research, I did the legwork. And also, people love talking about themselves. And the more that you know about them, sure, you can use it technically against them a little bit, but also you can use it to be like, look, this is somebody that I probably would want to work with. They're showing that they care more because they put that work in and they got to know the person. So you're doing the legwork to get to know them. You get to know what their habits are, get to know maybe even how they negotiate with other folks, preferably probably before you even end up talking to them. All right, do you present yourself in a certain way? So let's say outside of research, you get in there, lights, camera, action, you're in the interview, but you're probably not going to talk comp in this interview. Is there any approach that you take in terms of how to build your value so when it comes time to negotiate, there's a better chance that you're going to be able to get as much that you want or potentially more than what you want?
Yeah, it goes back to how you present yourself and how you show yourself as unique. And so there are a few different ways I like to do that. The first one I think of is just being able to ask short, simple questions. Come prepared. Where do you see this company going? What's your go-to-market strategy? What's the next step for this program? Short ones that are open-ended and prompt them to talk. Because that's why I do the research ahead of time, is to have icebreakers, have conversation, and boost their ego a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Breaks down those barriers and gets you to the point where you can actually start having a conversation.
Yep.
So same thing there. Other things I would do is when you get asked interview questions is keep them short and snappy, your answers. Because you don't want to have a 15-minute just monologue of going and going and going. The person gets lost, they tune out. Short, snappy answers, show you're prepared. And the final thing I would say is have a couple of insights ready. Did you know this about this industry? What about this? What's your guys' plan for this strategy that's about to happen in Q2? Are you prepared for that? We've seen it. I've sold this type of thing before. And this is how we handled it.
Man, I like that. It's part of the reason why I liked the idea of doing a podcast is that is another thing. I'm pretty long-winded, right? I can talk for a long time. I'm used to doing long-form content. I'm used to filling a long amount of time and having to talk, and what I have found when I interview, if I'm interviewing and it's like, man, I hate where I'm currently at. I'm not desperate to get to somewhere else, but I'm close. I come off differently. I'll go into more sell me mode, presentation mode in the way that I do that. It's just a natural disposition. When I'm at a place and I'm pretty happy, or I just hit on my equity and I've got ungodly sums. The comma moved a couple of times in the bank account. And all right, so now you want me to come in? All right, well, I have a lot of questions because I want to make sure that this is the right fit for me more than I even want to make sure that I'm the right fit for you. The more that I do that, the more that I ask those questions, and if you ask poignant questions, it shows that you have insight into their industry and into their business, which obviously is important to be a good salesperson also. But I have found the key word is indifference. It's a point of impulse. The more indifferent that I come off in terms of, hey, I'm more qualifying you than selling you on me, the more that they're interested in me. So I think people can fall into that trap a little bit where it's like, I got to sell me. You can sell you by not selling you. You can sell you by kissing it. Keep it short and simple with your answers. Make them concise, make them accurate, snappy,
Yep.
like you said, and then follow up with poignant questions that show that you're qualifying them and show that you've done a little bit of legwork and research into making sure that you have great questions to qualify them. And it is funny because the way that I positioned that question to you was kind of like, how do you present yourself? And the reality is the way that I present myself is through the questions that I ask them. And the better questions that I ask, the better I look without having to tell them how great I am. They're going to get a pretty good indication of that just based on my tone, the way that you handle yourself, but also the questions that you're asking and the fact that you may not need them as much as they might need you. And if you're an A player and you're prepared to negotiate comp like you're an A player, because if you're not an A player, good luck getting the top of the compensation range. You better come across like you are one if you want to negotiate comp like you're going to get paid like one. I think that is dude, that's great advice. That's very solid. All right, we're through the interview. Right, we've made it through. They've decided to get an offer over to you. All right, you put it at 150. They gave you a range of 60 to 120, and they even stepped up a bit. They put it at 125 salary on the offer. They're offering you some equity, a little bit of equity. It's going to be a
Little bit.
and I'm saying this on purpose. It's going to be a standard vesting schedule where the cliff happens in a year, and then you vest. That's pretty much the way that everyone does it, right? There's no way to get around it, right? And then you have your OTE and everything along those lines. So you got three components. You have your salary, which you want 150. They had a range of 60 to 120. They hit you at 125. All right. You have your equity. They presented you with some equity. All right, so it's okay. Standard vesting schedule. So to explain that, I guess better to folks that maybe haven't ever got equity or anything. So the way that equity typically works is that you will begin to vest those shares. Like let's say that they're going to give you 1,000 shares just to make it clean. Once you hit your year anniversary of when you started, usually you get 25% of the shares. So you hit your year anniversary, all right, 1,000 shares, you get 250 of them. They vested. If you're in a publicly traded company, you could sell them that day if you wanted to. You have the shares, you're good to go. If you're a private company, you have a strike price. You have to buy the shares and then sell them. Sometimes you can while you're working there, sometimes you can't. And then they will continue to vest either annually or quarterly, where it's like, all right, now every quarter from now until the end of the 4-year vesting schedule, we give you whatever percentage it is that then eventually adds up to.
Or monthly if you're early stage.
Yep, monthly if you're early stage. It depends on where you're at. All right, and then finally it was your OTE, your commission, and everything like that. So first off, am I missing a component? It's generally those three, right? We're talking salary, equity, and whatever is your variable commission, right?
Correct. And the other thing might be benefits, but again, it depends on how important that is to you.
Yep, fair, very fair. All right. So where do you start? When you've got the offer in your hand, is there a game plan in terms of your strategy of what you're going to negotiate first? Because you're not going to obviously probably negotiate it all at the same time. You're probably going to start with something, right?
Exactly. And so this comes back to your pre-interview prep. What's important to me? Am I in a position where I'm well off financially and I'm looking to strike it big with something with a stock? Am I looking to get in and out and go to another company? Mm-hmm. Or am I looking at this for the long haul and I need money as well to get wherever my life is at this point?
Yep.
So figure those things out before the call. In this example, I'll say, hey, stock is the most important thing to me because I want to hit it big. And then the schedule is second tier, let's call it that, because I want to be able to move and get stock elsewhere. And then third level is pay. Be nice to have more money, but hey, I can go close more dollars and make more commission. I can cover that myself quickly.
Yep.
So those are my top three. And the rule I've found is when you want something the most, you flip it and put it at the bottom of your priority list.
Fire. I like that. Because that shows that that you might not be most invested in it. And again, what are you looking to play up? Indifference. And the more that you might appear indifferent to the thing that you care about the most, I mean, I'm assuming that's what you're gearing at there, right? All right, so you'd start. So your equity might be your priority, but it's not where you're going to start, and that's by design in terms of how you're doing it. So where would you start for you?
For me, I would start with pay.
Okay.
And the bottom priority that I have, I'm going to start with that one.
Do you mean variable or salary?
And that's the question. What position are you in coming into this? Do you need money right now and you need security, you need to provide for your family? Okay, we might want to go higher base, lower commission percentage.
Hmm.
Are you a 22-year-old coming fresh out of college and you just want to be able to strike it big? Hey, maybe bet on yourself and work your way to making more commission. It depends on where you're coming from.
I think this is when it comes to variable comp in particular, but in general, in terms of your on target earnings, everything, right?
Yep.
This is where research can really come into play, right? In terms of, hey, what actually can you do there? And the only way to really know is not by asking the person that's interviewing you. They're not there. They're in sales too,
They're
and they're
selling
in
you.
sales at a higher level. They're going to sell. Oh yeah, you could absolutely make you could make millions here if you do, a 15,000% to your target, and it turns out that there's no way, no one's ever done it before. You want to talk to the people that are actually in there right now in the trenches, and you want to get a better idea and a better picture of what's realistic for them and what's realistic for somebody that's really overperforming. So I'm assuming that's what you do. Am I off base there?
That's right. And I don't know if you plug free ads, but there's a company called RepView where people in reps at companies leave anonymous reviews of the company, how much they made, top performer, middle performer, lower performer, and you can see how much each rep makes. So
Yep.
you're taking that information into battle with you as well. And you're just armed to the teeth when you go into a negotiation.
I'll be cutting that clip and bringing it over to RepView to negotiate something myself. But I agree.
Smart man.
I've been doing stuff with RepView for a while. I like them a lot.
Yep.
What I always say, and this is for anything, it's not a knock on RepView, but RepView is one asset that you can use within your process. It's like you wouldn't put everything that you have on Glassdoor. You wouldn't put everything that you have on LinkedIn if you just see a post about a company. You wouldn't put it all on RepView either. Although RepView I think is probably the most accurate based on the way that they do it. You also want that firsthand conversational information if you can get it from, all right, I'm an account executive, mid-market. All right, who's in there right now that's a mid-market account executive? All right, cool.
Or
Do I
better,
know any of them?
visuals. What's going on in CRM? What are people actually at? And you can extrapolate off of that.
Yep.
It might be tricky to get, but you can get to that point where they're actually showing you data and what people are doing.
Yep. So how are ways that you can do that? Well, one is, do you know people directly? You know people directly, you're good to go, right? You might not. You might even be connected with them directly, but you don't know them. But you notice that they're also connected to 5 other people that you know, and 2 of those people you actually know really well. All right, cool. I'm going to reach out to them and say, hey, do you know Danielle over at company so-and-so? I was thinking about reaching out to them about, how things are going over there, what you can hit, what you can't, what they feel about their target and everything like that. And one of those 2 that hopefully is going to say, yeah, I actually know her really well. I can, easily kind of broker a conversation with you guys and get that going. And that's going to, and why are you looking to do that? If you come completely cold talking to somebody and start asking them questions about their compensation, about what's realistic and about what's not, you may not get as accurate of a piece of information as you want. But if your homeboy or homegirl that you know really well is homeboys or homegirls with them and is like, yes, I could get that, there's such a higher chance that you're going to get way more accurate information from them once you start to talk to them, once you've had that warm introduction, and be able to get that. So I would say it's a combination. Places like RepView, places like Glassdoor. It's definitely more RepView in our lane, which is tech sales, and
100%.
the LinkedIn side of things. All right, who's working there? Who's with it? Who's working there that has the same title that I'm looking to have? That's working in the same segment? And do I know any of them well, or do I know somebody that they know well? And let's get a conversation going where I can start to ask a few questions and load up on those things on that side. I like that when it comes to comp. So let's say that we're talking comp and we're talking base salary, and we'll get to equity after because that's the big one, which I agree. A lot of the money that I've made is off of the equity for sure.
Yep.
And it's by betting on companies that you believe in for sure. So the more research that you do, the higher likelihood that you're going to be wanting more equity. It's also, from a manager perspective, a good sign. If you want more equity, it means that you believe in the company. If you believe in the company, sales the transference of certainty, chances are you're probably going to be a pretty solid salesperson on that side. So it's not a knock when you're asking for equity. It means that you want a piece of it because you plan on making that pie larger, so your slice becomes larger. So You said
You were truly an
150.
investor.
Yep, exactly. You said 150, right? It's what you originally put in. They were range 60 to 120. They come back at 125. Let's say you're starting at salary. All right. Where do you go from here? How do you position yourself? How do you come back to them on this piece before you move on to anything else?
I'd use the same objection handling that I would use on a sales call. 125? Just straight up mirror.
Yep.
And then sit there, awkward silence. The first person you talk loses.
Yep. Which you know they're going to because I've seen you in calls and you won't talk. So they're going to have to. You're not wrong there. It is funny because a lot of the stuff, and obviously you're younger than me, Luke, but like a lot of the cliches of sales when I was selling cars in 2006 are the same now. Like, all right, whoever talks first loses, and it's like, all right, it's a cliche way of doing things and everything like that. And it's like, all right, well, you may not lose the entire thing. But the reality is that if you start talking, what are you doing when you're talking? You're selling, right? So if you need to start talking in a negotiation, then you're probably intrinsically going to start kind of selling a little bit. And it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to lose, but it does mean that you're probably going to have to. You feel like you need to provide more information to justify the question that was just asked. Oh, 125, really? And then here they come from there. So in your experience, when you've done that, because I know you've negotiated your salary higher than probably what they initially came in at, what do you get from them? What could somebody expect if they try that out themselves? What have you experienced?
It really was just mirroring and then sitting there, pulling back. Because it's that same thing. They need to sell you on a reason to work with them or a reason to stay. I could leave. I could get up off this meeting right now and go find somebody else who's willing to pay me that. Yep. What's special about you? Sell me this pen. That's what I'm asking you to do.
Yep. I like that because it's not necessarily whoever talks first loses, but if they're beginning to talk, then you're kind of the ball's in your court in reality, because whoever talks the most puts themselves in a better position to lose.
Exactly.
Because you're revealing. You're revealing more. You're showing your cards. When it is. I always say it's very similar to a card game when it comes to sales, and you believe that your hand is worth more than any salary or anything that any other company be willing to pay you. Now, the only effective bet once you actually get in is all in, but that's a whole other kind of conversation. But yeah, are you showing your hand? Because if you're talking a lot, you are revealing that, and if you're negotiating, it's fairly similar to something like that, where do you really want to lay all of your cards on the table right off the bat? When do you lay all your cards on the table? I mean, I do with my wife, because I know
she has all the leverage.
Yeah, has incredible leverage actually. But God, the third kid on the way, man, that's leverage for sure. But it's not necessarily that. It's my wife, I know, has, I can trust her. I know that I can tell her everything, and I want to tell her everything because I'm safe to do that. She's invested in me. I'm invested in her, and we're building a life together and have been for, God, 7 years, So is a company the same? No, never, ever, 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 Whether or not they say that they're like a family there, trust me, they're not the same.
You hear that, run.
It's not the case. So the more that you reveal and the more that you show your hand, that's not going to be like, oh, cool. That's someone I want to work with. Those are elements that they can use against you in the negotiation. That's the reality. And guess what? You guys might end up very close to being like family 4 years down the road if you're still there, if you've got the right leadership and everything like that. Or at the very least, close friends in and outside of work, or people that, have a really outstanding professional relationship. But you ain't there yet, and you probably are never going to get there, most places, in reality. So whoever talks the most is setting themselves up to lose, I think is very fair. So when you say, all right, short answers to everything. The more that I talk, probably the higher chance that I'm going to lose. And when it comes to the negotiation, exact same thing. I'm keeping it short and simple. I'm going to say something, and I'm going to have them start to talk. I want to see their hand. I'm not trying to show them mine. Dude, I like that a lot. And now we're really getting into an idea. I think when I said I'm probably bad at it because I take things too personal, it's probably not that. It's probably this. I can be pretty long-winded. It's probably why I'm more of an SMB to mid-market guy. Because once I get to know their problems, god damn, I can sell the product. I can sell the shit out of how we can solve your problems, and I can get you excited, which is really, if we
Because
were to
you
really
know their
peel the
problems
onion
and what
back on me,
happens.
what am I good at? Is it discovery? Well, maybe a little bit, but if sales is a transference of certainty, I can transfer my certainty and excitement really well. In the interview process, that isn't what you're looking to do though. In the interview process, what you're looking to get transferred is as much of the funds that they have allocated to the role to you, not you to them. And the best way to do that is not through selling your sizzle. It's through, all right, I'm going to answer really short, and then I'm going to see what they're going to say back. And then it's going to be a bit of a back and forth. So you're never over revealing with your approach, and there's an incredible amount of indifference, which isn't, and it's not in a form of disrespect in the way that you're doing the indifference. Like, I don't care about you guys. It's just, no, I know my value, and I also know, you hit them with a little bit of kind of reverse social proof. There's plenty of other people that I can talk to about this. You guys are not the only game in town. I've got interest, or I wouldn't be talking to you, but here we are. All right. And so you ask that question, they come back to you, and it generally ends up in a back and forth. Are you going to remind them about the fact that you put 150? How are you hitting them with that?
Well, when we go with the 120, 150, it depends. Again, this is my lowest priority here. I want to see what other cards they have. And so that's why I'm going to say, okay, if we can figure this out, is there anything else we need to cover? Oh, we need to cover schedule, we need to cover stock, we need to cover benefits. Let's bring those cards up. Let's cover each one in turn, in tandem, and see what you guys have to offer here. Because I'm doing a little bit of a pullback, and I think it even comes from where the interview stems from. Did you get referred into this company? Are they reaching out to you? Yeah. Or did you go apply to them?
Yep.
That's an outbound sale where you have to have some sizzle at the beginning to stand out. Versus, all right, you've seen my talent, you know what I can do for you. What can you do for me?
Man, your approach is so thoughtful in like the way that it is, because it's first, all right, cool. What do I care about the most? I'm going to cover that last. I'm going to start with something else, and I'm going to translate it for myself, and you tell me if I'm wrong. What you're looking for when you open up the other elements of compensation, once you start with one, is I'm assuming that you're looking for where the wiggle room is. Where's the most space where I can get the most out of all of these? So if you feel like you might be at an impasse maybe on something, like, all right, cool. And then, so what naturally would, if somebody really wants you, when they start asking about the other things, what are they probably going to pull out of the bag? Probably, if I had to guess, maybe an area where there is a little bit of wiggle room and they know it.
What do they have to trade?
Right. What else can be done here? Let's talk equity a little bit. All right. So, in terms of the elements of equity, what are the things that you negotiate on there? Is it just the total, or is there anything else in there?
Total and schedule. So I am looking for as many shares as I can get as fast as I can get them.
Yep.
And I'm willing to give on some things. I won't tell you what they are because you need to hold your hand to your chest.
Yep.
But I'll give a little here to get a little more there.
Yep.
There's a trade. It's like any negotiation.
Yeah, and I actually have never seen anyone, let alone successfully, I haven't even seen anyone try to negotiate the schedule. I've never seen it. You're the only one that I know of. And
have you ever asked?
Dude, I mean, obviously I've offered a lot of people, and when I've offered them, the equity has been included, and they've been high-level people. They might ask for more shares. They don't ask for them faster. I've never had anyone ask for them faster. Now, why is it important to do that? Man, I could give you some examples that I'm legally not allowed to say, but I'll give you a vague, broad sense idea. You land at a place, and if you're at my level or your level, there's a very high chance that you already have equity at the place that you're already at. So if you leave, you are legitimately leaving money on the table because there's equity that you have not vested yet. And now you're going somewhere else. Now, when your vesting schedule says, all right, you start to vest this in the first year. Once that first year hits your year anniversary, that's when we actually start to vest you out. All right, that means that they've got a whole year to come up with any kind of reason to get rid of you, where not only are you not going to get their stock, but remember, you just lost out on the other stock that you left on the table at the last place. So when you're leaving, that's absolutely something to consider, because then when you look back, if you end up somewhere and it turns out that they sold you a bill of goods and it turns out that it wasn't what you were hoping it to be, now, not only did you pass up on the stock that you would have had you stayed somewhere, you have $0 and 0 cents in equity at that place because of your schedule. Now, if you had negotiated something like no cliff, which most places I think are vehemently against, but most people don't even ask. If you had negotiated something like no cliff in there, which means, hey, I don't want there to be a year cliff. I want you to pay me it quarterly. Let's say that it's not an early stage startup. You could say monthly, but let's say it's not an early stage startup. All right, we're not going to do a cliff. We're on a quarterly vesting schedule. You start giving me equity in the first quarter. By the way, personally, I think that's more than fair. Why? Because you're telling me that if I give you 9 months of sweat equity in the company, let's say 11 months of sweat equity in the company, I put everything that I have into it, doing absolutely everything, and I get to the end of that 11 months, let's say, and they say, man, we actually have to lay you off. That's the most likely scenario nowadays, right? Everyone gets laid off. A lot of people are getting laid off at companies that are posting record profits sometimes, and they're still laying people off because guess what? You can, because everyone else is. So they don't look worse than the next company because it seems like everyone is doing it at all stages of funding, size, everything. All right, you got laid off 11 months. You put everything that you had in there. In fact, you were over target. You crushed it. You helped out your people. Your people love you. You're doing awesome. They've decided that your entire org is redundant as a manager, or let's say as an AE, they decide, you know what, you're an enterprise AE. We decided that we don't want to do enterprise anymore. We don't think that it's working out. Not your fault. Could have been the fault of a manager. Could have been the fault of the fact that the product is not an enterprise product. Or they just don't know how to sell it to enterprise yet. And bam, you're done. You're gone. And they also have a higher likelihood of letting you go potentially if you're great at negotiating, because you are more expensive than the next person. So now not only are you gone, you don't have any of the equity that you just built up in 11 months. Is that fair? Absolutely not. It's not fair. So at the very least, you should try. How do you try is the question. Because I know, pretty much every company is going to have the statement, and sometimes I think it's accurate. It's from the board. You probably can't budget. Some not. We know that to be a fact, right? For sure. You can potentially do it. How do you ask for something like that a lot of C-level executives would probably say that is like borderline blasphemous or egregious? No one asks for it, and we always say no. So how do you position yourself? How do you even begin to broach the conversation on something that feels like an immovable object a lot of the time?
This is where it gets really complicated. I got like a 12-step process here.
Let's fucking go.
So the first step is, can we remove this cliff? That's actually all 12 steps. That's it. It's, you catch people off guard so often just by asking a simple question. They think there are ulterior motives. You're scheming something up. You're trying to cook up a plan. You're trying to give them the runaround. Anyway, we can just remove this cliff. And then follow that up with, I'm investing in you guys. Do you feel like you're investing in me? Is this a partnership, or am I your employee? And that can tell you a lot about the company as well.
It's all questions. It's never statements. That is something that I'm noticing, and dude, it's funny. I'll relate it to battle rap. It's funny enough. It's actually something that I struggle in battle rap. Economy of words. So what I would do when I was a battler is I really loved to write punchlines. I'll beat you to the ground like we were racing to the floor, like, whatever, a little metaphor here and there, right? And so what I would start to do is say, all right, that's not enough. I want a punchline within a punchline. An example I'll give you, dude, I know, I actually talked about him with Royce on the last podcast, Lo Pesci, well-known dude. He's the man. So he had a triple entendre, pull strings for the boss like Silvio Dante. All right. So first off, pull strings for the boss. So who's Silvio Dante? He was like the right hand man of Tony Soprano, right? Pull strings for the boss. So if you're the right hand man, you're pulling strings in the background and everything like that, right? What's the next one? All right. What was a way that a hitman would kill somebody in the mafia? Garrote wire. You would pull strings. You would put it around their neck. You see it in Godfather. Pull strings for the boss, like Silvio Dante. Now, who's the actor that plays Silvio Dante? I can't give you his name. I think is it Stevie Richards or something like that, or Little Stevie or
Over
something
my head.
like that. He's the guitar player for Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. He pulled strings for the boss. Jesus Christ, that's good. But he said it super fast. Pull strings for the boss like Silvio Dante. That's it. And until he explained it, you wouldn't know that that's a triple entendre. And then you're like, Jesus Christ, it's one of the greatest things that I ever heard. I wouldn't do that. I would have to extend the bar to another bar to get all of the different punchlines in that I wanted. I wasn't respecting economy of words and thinking of the way to say something in the shortest way that has the most impact. And all the stuff that you're describing is hands down economy of words. Where it's
let's pause there actually just
Yep.
for 1 second, because who are you usually negotiating with? It's not the director, it's not the sales manager. You are talking to a C-level.
Yep.
Have you ever gotten an email from a C-level? There's typos all over the place, there's no punctuation, and it's one line sent from my iPad.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they talk. Meet them at their level.
Yep. Yeah, because they're past the point of needing to overdo it. Or you know what? You actually never need to overdo it. They're past the point in their career where they think that they need to overdo it. Or where they feel like they need to push forward. You know what I'd probably say about this too, man, when it comes to how you do that with economy of words and your general disposition in the way that you do things is it's security versus insecurity a little bit. Or a lot of it, actually, where it's like, I don't need to. I genuinely know my worth. And if they don't perceive that through the conversation that we just had, it doesn't change. My worth isn't tied up into whether or not I get this job whatsoever. I'm pretty secure in the way that I do things and what I do. And I think that there is something to that. It's interesting because like Alex Hormozy says, like most like multi-millionaires have like this intense level of insecurity, but at the same time, are they the best salespeople? Or are they the hardest worker because they think that they need to prove it? They need to prove it through their work and the way that they do things. I would say that they're probably not the best salespeople all the time, or they've put in so much work to be able to fake a level of security that they can come off close to what you're doing. But with you, it's obvious that it's natural, and you can learn things that come natural to people, but man, it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of hard work and it takes a lot of repetition. But there's a lot to that where don't overdo it on what you're saying. I think it's a common thread on what we're talking about here, but in sales in general and in negotiating in general, economy of words matters. The less that you say and the more that you get across is going to provide a higher likelihood that you're going to get what you want, because you're not coming across like you're the one that wants it more than they want the other side.
Yep, and if I can add one more thing onto that, it's how it lands for them. How are you positioning it for them to understand?
Yep.
It's not what's going on in my brain. It's what's going on in Troy's brain. It's what's going on in the C-level I'm talking to's brain. What are they getting from the words that I'm saying? And where can I help lead them on the next step of this phase? And that's the beauty of the short questions, pauses, and kind of indifference, is it lets the words land and lets their mind run a little bit.
I'd like to role play it with you a little bit, because I'm curious how that would go. So let's go to the equity piece, because that's, to me, that was always the part that I thought was like the most like crazy, like in terms of like you're negotiating, because I was like, I've never seen this before. Certainly never seen it get signed off on. All right,
I can't believe it did.
Not naming any names. This could have been anywhere. You could have shown this to me at a different place that you were working at. It might not have even been a place that me and you worked together. We'll be real vague, super duper vague. We're not talking about anywhere in particular.
Nope.
But you say so. I tell you the equity. It's going to be 1,000 shares. Standard vesting schedule. First year hits, you get 25% of your shares, and then every quarter you get the other percentage until you reach the end of the 4-year vesting schedule.
Okay, what are we talking about on salary?
We're able to do 125,000 on salary.
125?
Yep.
Huh. Okay. So 125 salary, and that's base.
Yes, it's base.
Okay. Because I was talking about 150 here, and I got a couple other offers, but is like 125 where we're at?
Yeah, that's what we could get done. Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned there's the stock, which is 1,000, and then the schedule. Do you guys have a cliff?
Well, yeah. It's a year.
Have you ever waived that?
I don't think we have. Not that I've seen.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't seen it personally.
Everywhere else I've talked to, they've waived it. Because it seems like what we're doing here, and I want to work for you guys, and I want to make this work and take this company to the next level. But it doesn't quite feel like you guys are ready to invest in me. You want to trial me out for a year. That's what I'm feeling.
I mean, it's pretty standard, wouldn't you say? I mean, from my experience in terms of the equity, I mean, buy equity's on a cliff.
Did you ask about it when you started?
I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it might be a big ask, but Troy, you just mind asking for me?
I'll ask. It never hurts to ask.
Appreciate that.
I'll put an ask in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, like the big thing is I do see this company going places, and I want to be a part of building something special here. But I want to make sure it's rewarding. Sticking point, 150 was really my target. But is there anything you do to make up on stock? I was thinking like 10 or 11.
If I'm already asking, I'll see. I can't give you a yes or a no. That's beyond my scope. Whenever we're talking equity, it goes to the board. So it's a question that we'd have to ask.
Okay. Yeah, and just from what we've talked about over our last few conversations, you willing to recommend me for this position?
Oh yeah, we wouldn't be at the offer stage if we weren't ready to recommend you.
Okay, excellent. Because yeah, that's big. I want to make sure that again we're aligned here, we're working together. Mm-hmm. So it's the schedule, it's the stock, it's the pay we need to figure out. Benefits we push that to the side for now. Is there anything else that we need to cover here?
I think those are the big items, right? Is there anything else that you wanted to cover?
No, it's just I want to get out of this call, making sure that we have a plan written down moving forward.
Awesome. So I think this is a good point to make as well. Is that baby boy? Is that baby boy?
That's my son.
It's fire, man.
He's having a great time.
Man, I'm pumped to have another baby boy in the crib, dude. It's as good as it gets. But you could to the wrong person, and I mean this when I say the wrong person, on their side, and I do think that people do this. Funny enough, this is when I actually don't do it, because now if I was the manager in that situation, I'm negotiating for the company. It legitimately is nothing personal. I want you. That's how I look at it. I've seen it. You've probably seen it too, where they take it personal in the way that you come across. And if they do, you're probably talking to the wrong place. You probably shouldn't be there, because if they can't realize that what Luke just did when negotiating compensation is exactly what you're looking for in somebody when they're negotiating a deal, they're never going to respect the talents that you have once you get hired. And no matter how well you do while you're there, when it comes time to negotiate a pay raise or more equity down the road, there's a much lower likelihood that they're going to look at it and be like, yeah, we should give him more, because he has a unique skill set that a lot of people don't, and his ability to negotiate and the questions that he asks and the way that he can make somebody feel like they were wrong to begin with how they started. Did you negotiate yours that way? No. Oh, okay. Would you mind asking?
Why not?
For me? But some people look at that. It's funny, I was mentioning this with Jed when it comes to you. People look at that and they're like, man, Luke's hard to work with. No, he's not. He's not hard to work with. He knows, you know what you want. You know what you want. You know what you're worth. And you don't have time to bullshit about it. and you know that if you're to test the market, you're going to pass with flying colors. And I think that salespeople and sales managers look for salespeople that are willing to walk away from a deal when it doesn't make sense. And if you can't effectively negotiate your comp, how in the hell are you going to be able to effectively walk away from a deal that doesn't make sense if you couldn't walk away from a deal for yourself that didn't make sense for you?
What's the biggest deal you're going to work all year? You could think about the commission structure. You could think about all these deals that you're going to close. But what's the biggest one and the one that's going to impact you, the rep, the most? For Luke Ruffing, Inc., it's your comp plan.
This is it. Yep.
That's where you can make the most money.
Yep.
And so the one other thing I was thinking about through this whole conversation is you go through all these sales trainings at different companies. They teach you how to do spin. They teach you question-based sales. They teach you how to negotiate, pull levers, internal, where do I go for legal, and stuff like that. And then they don't expect you to take those same things that you've learned and apply it to the biggest negotiation of the year for you, which is your comp plan and your salary, which I think is backwards. Don't you want me to prove how much I've been paying attention? Do you want me to prove that I've actually learned the materials that you put in front of me and that I'm willing to go do this for myself and for you? How fast do you want me to run downhill for you? Or are you going to put walls in my way? That's what I'm thinking when I'm sitting here.
I do have another question for you, man. I 100% agree with that, by the way. So, the market has changed significantly. And when it comes to applying to places, let's go a year and a half ago. You apply to somewhere in tech sales. The recruiter is going to leap over their desk to get a hold of you the second that you apply, because everyone is caked up. Every company is doing well for the most part. Every company is not having a problem securing their next round of funding, which makes the company more valuable, which ups your equity, increases the chances that you're not going anywhere because, dude, this company just turned into a unicorn. Why would I leave when I have all these shares left? So the market's dry. It is a candidate's market, not the employer's market, by a mile. So you can easily be like, all right, I apply to the ones that I care about. I'm going to submit my resume. You might get a cover letter, maybe. Submit my resume. My resume's on point. It's updated, That's what you're going to get, though. I'm not going to go the extra mile, or I'm definitely not going to go the extra 10 miles, so to speak, to be able to get there. And I think that is very in line with your negotiation tactics in terms of your indifference. Now let's fast forward to today, all right? And let's say, I'm not going to say you because I don't even like putting that bad juju on anyone. Let's say that Bill, whoever the hell Bill is, got laid off. Bill has a similar skill set to you, similar ability to negotiate, let's say. He's that one in a million that can do it. And now Bill needs to start applying at places, all right? And what would be your approach there before you negotiate, before anything, when you're looking for a role? How would you apply? What are your steps there? What advice would you give to somebody that's in that market now?
If you're Bill and you have a skill set and you understand how sales work, everything we've been talking about on today's episode is literally pulled from how sales work.
Yep.
So let's take this a step further. We're going, instead of having an AE call where you're trying to close somebody on a contract, we're trying to get attention. We are becoming SDRs for Luke Ruffing Inc. or Bill Inc.
Yep.
In this case. And so let's try one way. I could send out a marketing email cold to somebody. Well, that's my resume. It gets deleted. They're not going to look at it. How can you stand out and be different? Because you're not trying to feign indifference at the beginning. You're trying to attract attention, and attention from the right people. Yep. So what are ways we can do that? Seems like people are scared of cold calling right now, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you cold call a sales manager at a company you want to work at. Call up Troy. Hey, Troy, give me a quick ring here. Have you gotten any cold calls today? Is your team dialing?
No.
Yes, no, etc. Guess what I'm doing? I'm working for myself, and I want to work for you, and I'm willing to put in the dials for you. What sort of impact would that have? Cold calling, great way to stand out. Leveraging connections. Bill knows Bob over at X company, who's an AE over there. Bob, can you introduce me to your director, Troy? I just want a cold or warm intro, and here's an email you can forward on for me.
You know what I like
Different
about
ways to
that?
heat up leads.
What I like about that again is how brief you keep the convo, right? So when you cold called, you weren't hitting this long presentation about yourself. In fact, it didn't even appear like you were looking to have a long conversation. It looked more like, hey Troy, this is Luke. Did you get any cold calls so far today? No. All right, cool. I just wanted to let you know that I applied to that open role that you guys have, and that's what I do. Looking forward to talking to you guys. I'm assuming that you don't want to have a longer conversation there. You almost want to get off the phone because, the way that I advise people when it comes to interviewing and everything like that is that what you want is when you get off the phone, that they may not offer you right on that call, right? Most companies are not going to,
Nope.
but you want to be the benchmark that everyone else is measured to from here on out based on the activity that you've done. So that's a perfect example. When you start talking to other people and in the back of their head, all right, candidate X that I'm talking to now didn't cold call me. Luke did. Luke has a leg up over everybody now because Luke did that cold call and is willing to initiate a conversation. And this guy sounds desperate, or this gal sounds desperate. She's overselling herself. Luke left more to the imagination, but also went the extra step somehow. Did both. Put in extra activity, yet maintained your indifference, which is legitimately a phrase I learned in door to door, where it's like you never lose your indifference. And if you were selling your manager and you could get them to be a little hyped up, they lost their indifference. You maintain your indifference, yet ramped your activity. I think that's probably the best piece of advice that people could get in terms of when you're looking for your next role, is that you can go the extra mile without appearing desperate. You can go the extra mile without making it appear that your worth is less than it actually is. There's a difference between being willing to put the work in and lowering yourself in your standing to the people that you're interviewing with. That's that's fire. I think this probably would be one of the most helpful things to folks, particularly right now in this job market, both on how to get things going and on how to negotiate once you get there, regardless of what the market is. Because once they offer you, you should be negotiating your compensation. Luke, appreciate you, man. One of my favorite salespeople to work with in my career, and it's been a fairly long career so far, man. And I think one thing that I would say is that 4 out of 5 people that would probably manage you, and I've seen some at the VP level, would say that you're not a culture fit. And what I would challenge them is that you are a culture fit. They're not a leadership fit. You need to learn to lead different types of people, and you need to learn to be able to invest in different types of people, different personality types, different dispositions, different approaches. The things that you're looking for in a salesperson sometimes are different than what you're looking for in someone from the culture side of things. And that actually doesn't mean that your culture is right. Your culture could be wrong, because when you make the personal investment in somebody, not based on the first impression that you got when you tried to negotiate comp with Luke and he said 5 words and you all of a sudden paid him 20 grand more, the reality is if you actually make an investment and get to know that person, man, would you be shocked at what a great culture fit they are in reality. And I think that there's a lesson to be learned there on the leadership side for sure.
Absolutely.
Dude, legitimately, we don't 10x the outbound revenue in the first year if you're not on the team. And I was struggling with people that didn't want to have you on it. What
and that's
idiot.
again leadership.
I don't know.
You were a mentor, and this is where things are different. You took it as a mentor opportunity, and you actually took the time to know me, ask questions, and show me respect. And that turns around the other way, where I respect you. It's a give and a take versus being told what to do,
Yep.
which is a boss mentality. Don't tell me what to do. Let's work together and approaching the same thing and crush it 10x what we could do if you just told me to do it.
100%, man. Dude, appreciate you joining. I'm sure this won't be the last time, but definitely a good first one, man. I think there's a lot of value here for people, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Great time, Troy.
I talk to the people with nothing to lose, smoking up in the rooms, hopeless, broken, and caught in the evil. I can't make it rain, but I can make a song to make your eyes April shower. Day by day, I'm taking off. So say goodbye, I'm changing now. I'm afraid I'm